That's right, Proxyopolis. We're going to do an indefinite number of episodes leading up to the Proxyopoly score, premiering this season on the Proxyopoly podcast. Welcome back, all you bulls and bears and betas out there, within the buzz of this Proxyopoly spin-off we call the Proxyopoly podcast. I'm the Jackal of Trades. In this episode, The Burnout, we will be deliberating these corporate buzzwords even further until Proxy Zero relinquishes the Proxyopoly scores assigned to various non-fictional Proxyopolies known to Proxyopoly of the Whole and its alternative forms. Now a word from the Jackal of Trading Card Games, NASCAR Cosa. Well, if it ain't Proxyopoly of the Whole and its alternative forms. I'm NASCAR Cosa, the Jackal of Trading Card Games, within the context of a friendly game of Proxyopoly, brought to you by Proxyopoly of the Whole and its alternative forms. If any of these matters sound familiar to you, it's because you likely heard them on the Game of Proxyopoly podcast, where we deliberated certain absurdist corporate buzzwords such as the Black-Scholes Samaritan model, the discharge of the general partner at large, and now extending to crowdfunding efforts. You can now send your money to Proxyopoly today by the Send Your Money to Proxyopoly option on the Linktree at Linktree/NASCAR Cosa. And again, that is L as in Linktree/NASCAR Cosa. I as in it can be found on Linktree/NASCAR Cosa. N as in never mind. Look what I found on Linktree/NASCAR Cosa. It's the research materials, the Cerberus Paribus, and the dogs barking in the background. K as in K, so I've found the proxy variables for non-financial performance. Now how do I make them germane on financial statements? T as in that's why you go on the Linktree at Linktree/NASCAR Cosa, or as in resolved, Linktree/NASCAR Cosa. Spot. E as in ergo. I found all the proxy variables on the Linktree at Linktree/NASCAR Cosa. E as in another ergo. I found all the ways to calculate it with anti-logarithms for the Proxyopoly ratings to derive the Proxyopoly score on Linktree/NASCAR Cosa. Slash. N as in NASCAR Cosa. You get it. NASCARCOSA. Linktree/NASCAR Cosa. And again, you can submit your proxy content to this Proxyopoly system we call the Proxyopoly podcast by selecting the Contact Proxyopoly option today on the Linktree. In doing so, you can talk about whatever it is you want to talk about and promote. You can also play the game of Proxyopoly. The choice is yours, Proxyopolis. Select either the Contact Proxyopoly option or the Send Your Money to Proxyopoly option. Again, the decision to do so would be entirely yours, Proxyopolis at home. And bon chance, mes amis, in a friendly game of Proxyopoly, brought to you by insert sponsored content here. See, instead of doing all these fictitious Proxyopolies, we are going to talk about the non-fictional Proxyopolis known to Proxyopoly of the Whole and its alternative forms. As soon as Proxy Zero relinquishes the Proxyopoly scores, which would be digital assets protected under the trademark of Proxyopoly, at which point things would definitely get interesting here on the Proxyopoly podcast. Wouldn't you agree, Jackal of Trades? Thank you NASCAR Cosa for that thrilling introduction to this episode of the Proxyopoly podcast. Albeit notwithstanding, we are now at Season 1, Episode 3, or for hardcore Proxyopoly fans out there, Proxyopoly is now at episode number 31 in its entire series. And at the behest of Proxyopoly of the whole and its alternative forms, I would like to extend my thanks to you, Proxyopolists at home, for your dedication and keen listening skills to make it this far in the Proxyopoly system we call the Game of Proxyopoly podcast and the Proxyopoly podcast, brought to you by Proxyopoly of the whole and its alternative forms. Now that the Proxyopoly scores are in the hands of Proxy Zero, it looks like it's time to make a few cold calls.
Twang, 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 twang. We have a Proxyopoly call for you. We are the shackles of the General Partner Lodge, and there's a Proxyopoly waiting for you. What do you get when you proxy with the shackles? Nothing but the shackles of the General Partner Lodge. There are Proxyopoly skulls waiting for you. What are the Proxyopoly ratings? Dun 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 dun. Proxyopoly ratings. They are the Proxyopoly of the whole. You can be a Proxyopolist too if you play the game of Proxyopoly. Two. Twang.
Proxyopoly of the whole and its alternative forms. Are you feeling burned out yet? Questing and navigating this Proxyopoly system for your precious Proxyopoly scores. Without this, I'm afraid the digital assets protected under the mark of Proxyopoly may be powerless. Proxyopolis, now is your chance. This week's mission, Proxyopoly. You've gathered enough Proxyopoly ratings. You may receive one Proxyopoly score from Proxy Zero. These are my demands, Proxyopolis. So increase those Proxyopoly ratings by liking and subscribing wherever you get your Proxyopoly podcasts. Stream for free wherever you get your Proxyopoly podcast via Linktree at Linktree/NASCARCosa. For the time being, Proxyopolis, your last word for this episode of the Proxyopoly podcast. Taking into consideration the innumerable amount of proxy variables roaming this Proxyopoly system in the game of Proxyopoly podcast and the Proxyopoly podcast, there's a plethora of information on the Linktree for all Proxyopolists to play along, no matter the skill level. Proxyopolis pro tempo or proxy pundit. The choice is yours, Proxyopolis. Find the mock prospectuses today on the Linktree and play along with all of the events within Proxyopoly. For the time being, albeit notwithstanding, we will be proceeding with the default option, provided that there's a lack of response in the contact Proxyopoly option and the send your money to Proxyopoly option. But as a reminder, you can select either of those options today on the Linktree at Linktree/NASCARCosa. Anyway, yes, the reason why we gather here today, if you want to have these Proxyopoly scores, Proxyopolis, once again, the Proxyopoly ratings have to increase, so bump up those numbers, like and subscribe today, wherever you get your Proxyopoly podcast, cause TikTok, time's not a thing to waste in Proxyopoly. I'm Proxy Zero, Proxyopolis Pro Tempore of Clown Corp International Holdings, Incorporated, a fictitious Proxyopoly system featured on the Game of Proxyopoly podcast. But we're on the Proxyopoly podcast, so we're gonna keep this germane with non-fictional Proxyopoly, known to Proxyopoly of all and its alternative forms. Ta-ta for now, time blind.
Well, there you have it, Proxyopoly of the whole and its alternative forms. I'm NASCAR Cosa, coming at you live from the streets of Proxyopoly. It's a reminder that you can join us in this quest for Proxyopoly scores and the Proxyopoly podcasts by selecting any of the options on the link tree. And TikTok, Proxyopolis. Stay tuned for more developments in the realm of Proxyopoly. Via the portals on the link tree, at linktree/NASCAR Cosa, you can always stay connected to all things Proxyopoly. And if you want to do anything else in the Proxyopoly, I don't know, we could play rock, paper, scissors here. We could auction off airtime on this Proxyopoly podcast to the highest bidder, and everything in between. I'm NASCAR Coast of the Jackal of Trading Card Games. And if you feel discharged, lucky Proxyopolis, you can find yourself fortunate enough to gather enough Proxyopoly ratings to collect enough Proxyopoly scores to assign them to the correct Proxyopoly via all the fun ways to play the game of Proxyopoly in this Proxyopoly system. Coming at you live from the streets of Proxyopoly on the Proxyopoly podcast, I'm NASCAR Cosa, the Jackal of Trading Card Games, and it looks like there's no one out here to play a friendly game of Proxyopoly, so I'm just going to sign off on this episode of the Proxyopoly podcast. But before we go, a word from our sponsors. Auctioned off at the highest price to the highest bidder accordingly. That's right, Proxyopolis. If you would also like to buy airtime on an bid-ask basis, select the Contact Proxyopoly option and send your money to Proxyopoly today. And in return for doing so, you can talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about on this Proxyopoly podcast, Proxyopolis. At any rate, I'm NASCAR Cosa, the Jackal of Trading Card Games, signing off on this Proxyopoly spin-off episode we call The Burnout. Continuing to right the way in the Proxyopoly system for all the Proxyopolis out there. Drang. Hi, I'm Jesse Colbertic. Buying airtime on this podcast to remind all of you listening out there that Discharged is out now and available wherever you get your slug crust. That's right, Proxyopolis. Discharged is out now wherever you get your slug crust. And we're back to the Proxyopoly podcast. I'm the Jackal of Trades. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Proxyopoly podcast, Proxyopolis. In return for your participation and listening experience, Proxyopoly will be relinquishing these Proxyopoly scores as soon as they are retrieved from Proxy Zero's custody. That's right, Proxyopolis. You can help Proxyopoly increase the Proxyopoly ratings by liking and subscribing today wherever you get your Proxyopoly podcasts. Again, I am the Jackal of Trades, signing off on this burnout episode of the Proxyopoly podcast. Good luck in your next meeting, Proxyopolis. May the mock investments involve the mock risks, and the past performance is not indicative of future returns. If you're still out there listening, You can submit any amendments to the bylaws of Proxyopoly of the Whole and its alternative forms to make germane here on the podcast by selecting the Contact Proxyopoly option today. Otherwise, the Proxyopoly podcast, and even perhaps the Game Up Proxyopoly podcast, will be proceeding as the default option. Thank you for listening. I'm the Jackal of Trades, signing off on this Proxyopoly spin-off we call the Proxyopoly podcast. And if you would like to buy your own time here to talk about whatever it is you would like to talk about, Proxyopolists, kindly select the Contact Proxyopoly option. And don't forget to send your money to Proxyopoly today by selecting the send your money to Proxyopoly option via the link tree at linktree/NASCARCosa. Albeit notwithstanding, I'm still the Jackal of Trades. Thanks for playing along, Proxyopolists. Until next time, stay tuned. Because again, the Proxyopoly podcast will be dropping episodes on an ad hoc basis, as necessary, whenever the Proxyopoly sees fit. And now, a final word from this episode's proxy content, brought to you by this episode's guest Proxyopolist. Hi, I'm Jesse Cole Burdick, guest Proxyopolist, talking about whatever it is I want to talk about and promote. This is just an example for which one can either play along in the game of Proxyopoly on the Game of Proxyopoly podcast via the Proxyopoly podcast, or promote your band's album, talk about your podcast, promote your company's initiatives on whatever, recite your poems, roll some dice, and don't forget to say your name and what you're doing. And then make some jokes, acknowledge the fact that this is a podcast operating in a Proxyopoly system in which you would be buying airtime, and is a healthy part of any marketing strategy. Proxyopoly. If it ain't Proxyopoly, you're Proxyopolian.